Hello, sweet souls, and welcome to this new episode of Awaking Moment podcast. It's going to be deeply personal. I just put that warning out in case you are sensitive or could be triggered by topics of lost love, of teen pregnancy, or being physically assaulted in a way that was inappropriate. Those are all things that I'm going to talk about in this episode. I do believe that this experience of being 17 in this life is an important one and one that wants to be shared. So thank you again for joining. I welcome you. I'm Danny Palacio. And so this is something that has come up as I have started to reclaim my light and also really honor that I have been conditioned, that certain traumas in my life have created blocks that have influenced and created a set of beliefs that actually do not resonate with me anymore, that I have grown and I have healed. As I often do, I go internal, and I am a person who believes that no matter what age you are, that there is a version of you for every age you have been. So conception to birth, birth to present moment, I'm in my mid 50s. So I have a lot of internal versions of Danny. And 0 to 8 tends to be the years that are the most convicted, confused around what occurred, how it occurred, what it meant. And of course, there is a survival mechanism that we humans have. It is our instinct to survive. And our little ones, our 2-year-old, our 5-year-old, our 7-year-old, they went through experiences that they were like, I don't know what this means. I just know I feel terrified. I just know I feel horrible. I just know that I can never have that feeling ever again. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do to survive. God bless them, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be here right now. And so that's my general approach to healing. Honestly, there's so many other things, but it's the foundation of accepting, integrating, loving, holding all of the parts of me that make me here right now. So as I was going through this experience of finally releasing the pick me wound, I mean, it's a wound. It's from a trauma. I asked who was really, truly holding it. Like, who do I need to sit with? Who do I need to listen to? And when I say that, I mean in meditation, sometimes even in journaling. It's nice to have a vehicle where you can sit down and you can just journal as that 17-year-old or whatever age it is for you, and just write out the story that they're holding. 17 wants to share her story with you. I prayed about what this episode was going to be, as I do every episode, and I asked what the general collective needed to hear, and she raised her hand and she said, tell them my story. So I am. The 17-year-old Danny had quite the experience. And I didn't even fully remember all that had happened in that one year. So I had lived in New Mexico. My parents had moved from Minnesota the year prior, and I was my junior year. And I had acclimated to the new culture, to the new people, to the new school. I was dating and was in love with a high school boyfriend who was handsome and popular and was an MVP football player and was on track and it did all the things, right? And was a local dude that people knew. His family, people knew. And so what's this girl from Minnesota doing? Dating one of the town's, young men that should have been dating someone else, honestly, is how I felt. And I was very homesick for Minnesota. 17-year-old me was really trying to just make this relationship work. At some level, 17 felt like all the hopes and dreams that you do when you're little, like my boyfriend's going to be this and I'm going to marry so-and-so and Oh, and you just dream about what the fairy tale of a relationship should be. And I liked it. I found joy in it. I found purpose. I found identity. And so along came the 17-year-old. My parents had announced to me that we were moving and that my senior year was going to be in Oregon. And that meant that I wasn't going to be able to stay with him because he was a year older than me. So he was graduating. I was a junior. He was a senior. And that wasn't going to happen. He was going off to college and I was moving him to Oregon. And as that approached, things got really triggered. Back then, I didn't know it, but I became kind of obsessive, kind of totally insecure and paranoid, super jealous. And as I grew, I'm going to jump to the future self. When I was in my mid-20s in deep counseling around life and integration and all the things, when I looked back at 17, I hated her. I hated that version of myself because how pathetic, how sad, what kind of girl does the shit I did at 17 to keep this guy, to ensure my future? Because deep down inside at 17, I knew I wanted to marry this guy. I wanted to have his children. I didn't want to move. It was catastrophic. It was like the end of the world. And of course, we had been having sex. And as it got closer to leave, what happened was I got pregnant. And I couldn't really accept that I thought I was. And oddly, the universe, the divine stepped in, because now I can say that. I was almost disassociated because I didn't want this child, yet I wanted this child. That means we can stay together. That means that we'll be forever bonded. All the stuff that is not healthy, codependent, absolutely not what I would choose now. Anyway, it was time to move. And my mom and my dad had already gone to Oregon, and my mom and I, with her best friend and her best friend's daughter, so the four of us, she was younger than me, we drove to Oregon. The daughter and I were in one vehicle, and my mom and her best friend were in a truck kind of thing, and I miscarried on the road. And I never told anyone. I didn't even really tell myself, to be honest. I just treated it like a really horrible, painful period. But I knew what it was. I knew that I was no longer pregnant. I could feel it, the way that it was different. It wasn't like a clot. It was so different. Yet for years and years and years, I never admitted that I was pregnant or that I had a miscarriage. You know, when you go into your doctor's office and they give you the paperwork to fill out and they ask you, have you ever been pregnant? Yes or no? I always said no. I always said no. It wasn't until oh my goodness, late 20s that I said yes. So you would think that the story would end there because that's enough, right? 17, she's had enough. My God, just get her to Oregon and all of that. Well, we moved in with my uncle that summer, who I didn't really know very well and wasn't sure I really liked, but he was kind enough to have us have a place to stay. It was in Portland, Oregon. And that summer, I was devastated because I left the love of my life and I didn't have any money. And he helped me get a job at a bakery. I knew how to cake decorate. I did it professionally before. Yes, I started cake decorating when I was 12. So I had 5 years of experience. Anyway, I passed the test and I got hired at this bakery. And it was in Northwest Portland. And I had to drive over the big Fremont Bridge. It's a double-decker, really high, archy kind of bridge every day to go to work. And I was 17. And everyone I worked with was late 20s to mid 50s. And I was a cake decorator. I had the Safeway account and I decorated cakes every day for delivery to Safeway because at the time Safeway didn't have their own bakery in the store. I mean, this was a long time ago. So I met a fellow cake decorator and she became my lifeline. And she was young. She had married young. She had 2 kids and she was going through a transformation physically, weight-wise. She was losing a lot of weight and she was separating from her husband, and she was having that free, oh my God, I can have whatever I want life. And she did. And I kind of hung out with her to do it too. So I got into bars and I drank all summer and I worked, and I was like, at 17 years old, I think I was making $18 an hour. And I was working quite a few hours. And then July hit, and I knew that my boyfriend, my high school boyfriend, and I were not going to make it. Like, this is just not what I thought it would be. And I missed him too much. And I was like, my life is going to be here now. I knew that, right? So we used to talk like on a Sunday, let's say. And that conversation, I think in mid to late July, I'm like, I think we just need to accept that we're not going to be together. And so I don't know who broke up with who, but we broke up. And it was devastating to let all those dreams go and to fear that I would never have them again. And I made some pretty big vows to myself around what relationships would look like and how relationships would be moving forward. And yet I was 17, I had a car, I had money, I had a job, and I had this fun friend at work, and kind of got myself into some situations that I think are pretty funny, but when I think about 17, she didn't really think they were so funny. Again, the story could stop right there, but there's more. So I want to say right now that I'm going to share a story about how sad and depressed that I got and how desperate. So if suicide is something that you can't handle talking about or listening to, I just encourage you to fast forward or turn off the podcast at this point. So I had gotten into a really hard mental state. I didn't even realize it, honestly. I was kind of numbing out with alcohol, and I started to think about how I could end my life. And I had thought about all kinds of different ways, but I thought alcohol and pills are probably the best and easiest way. So, and my mom and dad were super busy, right? Like, it's not their fault, but they were super busy trying to find a place for us to move to live, because at the end of August, I needed to start my senior year somewhere. And I couldn't see the future. I couldn't see how this is all going to resolve itself to where I would finish high school, go to college, have a life with. I just couldn't. It was not within me. And at the same time, this friend of mine from work, all of the people at work actually were invited over to a guy's house for a barbecue. And originally we weren't going to go. And then we were like, oh, let's just pop over. So we popped over, and this guy was probably in his late 40s, early 50s. And I knew him, right? I knew him from work, and he was friendly towards me. I didn't really think much of it. But at the party, she went off to talk to other people, and him and I ended up in the kitchen together. And he had been drinking, and I had just gotten there. And anyway, I got pushed into the wall, into a corner, and assaulted. I wasn't raped, thank God, but I was felt up, and he was kissing me, and I said no multiple times, and I wanted out of there. And by saving grace, this friend of mine came back into the kitchen. She's like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, no, we need to get out of here. We need to leave right now. And so we did. And I told her what had happened, and I asked her to just please never leave me alone at work with him. And she's like, well, that's kind of hard, because he was all over the place anyway. And then I realized that I didn't really have that much time left at this job. I was eventually thinking I was going to start high school at some point somewhere. Anyway, that kind of pushed my mental capacity to a place where it was like, this is shit. And I still can't think clearly about what my future will hold. And so I got what I needed, and I just decided that I was going to do it. And so I was ready, and I realized I probably should say goodbye to my sister, because I love my sister. And she lived out in DC at the time, and she was married, and she had her little baby girl. And so I called her, not really even realizing the time, honestly, but it was 3 hours difference. So she answered the phone, and she's like, hey, what are you doing? What are you up? Why are you up? Like, are you okay? And I was crying, and I had started drinking already. I was crying, and she's like, are you okay? And I said, I will be. And she goes, what does that mean? And she basically saved my life. That night, she said, whatever you're thinking of doing, don't do it. And I said, I can't be out here anymore. I can't be with mom and dad. There's no future for me. And she's like, there is a future. She says, don't do whatever you're thinking of doing. I will get you a ticket. You will be here and you will come to visit me. And I said, I don't know. And she kind of worked a miracle in a lot of ways, because I think like the next afternoon or evening, I was flying to DC. So I don't know how she did that. And I do know that when I was out there, she had talked to my mom and dad, and she's like, she's not coming back until you have bought a place and you have a room for her and you know what school she's going to. She's not coming back. And I think I spent like at least 2 weeks out in DC with her. And we talked, and things shifted, and I did not kill myself. I did not. But I was super close to, and I was so willing to, because I could not fathom what a future would look like. And if anybody knows me, you know how much I dream and I vision and I plan. And I've always been that way. But this time I couldn't do it. And I don't even know how the job ended, to be honest. I can't even remember if I quit, if I just didn't show up. I have no clue about how that all worked. Never saw this woman again, the friend, nothing. And so 17 made it. And I came back to Oregon. I started my senior year of high school. She was not believed at the counselor who was admitting her into her senior year. I was an honor student. I was a year ahead in science, a year ahead in math. I was in advanced English, and my GPA, because of advanced studies at the school I was in New Mexico, allowed you to have a higher than 4.0 grade point average. And I did. And I was in National Honor Society. And so Miss Smarty Pants over here was not believed. Danielle Palacio came into the office of this counselor administrator, and he saw the last name, and he assumed he was meeting an ESL student. So, and my mom and dad were on the farm, and they were working, and so they sent me in by myself to do all the paperwork, and, and he looked at my GPA, and he's like, he didn't believe it. And he's like, well, that's not how we do things here. And I have already set up a schedule for you. And I said, well, why did you do that? And I said, well, what kind of schedule did you set up? And it was like remedial. And I said, obviously I speak English. I'm in advanced classes. I don't understand why you have assumed this about me. And I had come from New Mexico, and a lot of people back then, even people from Minnesota that I grew up with, thought I was moving to Mexico, not New Mexico. And I think he had a similar thought for some weird reason. Even though he saw the transcripts, he knew all the academics that I had. And so that was pretty devastating, and to not be believed, to be questioned after this assault. After moving from New Mexico to Oregon, after almost killing myself, to have this white man totally not believe me. And I ended up leaving crying, and I got home, and I said to my dad says, how did it go? And I said, he didn't believe me. And my dad goes, what? And I said, yeah, he questioned whether or not I actually took these classes and whether or not I really got these grades. And he told me that I wasn't going to be a National Honor Society anymore, that they were taking me out of it. And he said he was going to fix my GPA to their scale, which would way lower take a whole point off, basically, which would lower my GPA to, like a 3.2. But 3.2 versus 4.2 is a way big difference. And it made a difference to colleges, and it made a difference to what kind of classes I could take. And anyway, my dad was like, get in the car. And so we got into that little truck and we drove over there. And he went in and talked to this counselor and said, "How dare you treat my daughter like this? I don't even understand your bigotry and your racism, because look at her and look at her grades. And you will not take her out of National Honor Society, and she will get into advanced math and advanced science. And you need to apologize." And he said he was sorry in the moment. And it all worked itself out, right? And 17 is almost 18 at this point, because this is like the third week in August. I was going to start school like the next week. And my birthday is September 5th, which is the following week. So it was only 2 weeks away from turning 17 to 18. 17 here, right now, wants you to know that experiences add up, and the burden and the fear and the scarcity mind thinking adds up. And so she wants to ask you all, what year do you need to go back and listen to reclaim yourself, to know that you are worthy, to know that you are enough, to release the limiting beliefs that you created in fear and in darkness and in shame? We all have one, if not more. And she and I have spent every day together since the 14th of February to heal, to listen, to partner, to have me understand that it wasn't just one of those experiences, that it was all of them in 1 year. And I had not put that together. I'm grateful to her. I am grateful to myself for having the commitment to continue to ask the question. And I'm so grateful I'm here. I'm so grateful that I'm alive. I'm so grateful to my sister and to every friend I've made since then. Because I get it. I get that 17 had a lot of like, big, scary moments, overwhelming. And to have it all in 1 year was a lot. But then I think about the strength internally that my energy, my soul had kept for myself, even though there were things that challenged me. And they have been showing up in my relationships throughout my adult life, and why I feel the way I feel like I need to be loved, to know that I am chosen, to know that I am loved. I get now why I've been experiencing this. And it can go back even further. It can go back to how my mom raised me, right? My dad worked and he did what he thought he needed to do as a man. He provided for his family. He didn't really interact with most of us, with me especially. I never felt like he didn't love me, but he wasn't very present. And my mom was like Miss Codependent. She's like, I fed her, I took care of her, I emotionally supported her. She made it very clear to never leave her. That's why she had me, so that she would never be alone. And that's the story, right? So even all of that, the mother wound, the father wound, yes, contributed to deep belief systems, but 17 lived out so much and had such a dramatic, sad, scary, horrific, traumatic experience that year. So much change, so much she never talked about. She never even shared with anybody. Like this story that 17 has asked me to share, her life experience at 17, me at 17, it needed to be heard. Now, I don't know if anybody's going to listen to this podcast. I have a few people that are extremely loving towards me and listen to my podcast every week. And I appreciate you, and you know who you are. This one's rare. And this one's raw. And this one, I hope, inspires you to love yourself more, to own your light, to remember that you are here for a reason. And my 17-year-old self sends love to the part of you that's going to hear this. Because I'm going to say it's not going to be the current self. It's going to be a younger part of you that has been feeling like something as I've been speaking. as the frequency of my tone and my voice has reached into you and activated an awareness around a particular year in your life. And I encourage you to listen, to write it out, to honor, you don't have to make it mean anything about yourself, but to give that part of you the freedom to share the story as she or he experienced it at that particular age. So thank you so much. I love you all. I'm grateful for you. And I know this was a big, kind of intense podcast, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you listening and being here. And I appreciate my 17-year-old self wanting to come out, a different kind of coming out, but she really asked for this, and I can feel her inside. I can feel that part of me being like, full exhale. So if you are emotionally charged, please take a deep breath in and tell that part of yourself, I will listen. It doesn't have to be today. Remind yourself that you are worthy, that you are lovable, that you are needed, that you are important, that you are chosen, and you hold a light and a frequency that is absolutely necessary for this world right now. And I thank you for honoring that part of yourself. And I send you added blessings. Again, if you are feeling emotionally stirred, please put your hand on your heart. Please give yourself a big hug and take care of yourself. Light a candle, get some essential oils, get some water, drink some water, and breathe. And remind yourself that you are safe and you are safe and seen. And if you need support, please reach out. All right. Until the next episode, thank you.